Welcome everyone. Thank you so much, and thank you for bearing with us while we had a little bit of a technical hitch, and the link to this first of our two webinars about manifesting with the moon for some reason wasn't operating, so we've had to switch to a different one. So thank you so much guys for moving over with us and bearing with us. Life just doesn't always run smoothly, does it? And that's just how life is, and it's actually, in a funny way, it's a wonderful introduction to learning to manifest with the moon, because life doesn't always run smoothly for us, and we can so easily get knocked off balance, find our sort of capacity to hold our energy and our focus when we're manifesting. We can find that really quite difficult when there are tons of things happening in our world that maybe don't run smoothly. I mean, we all have days when life is just flying and buzzing and it's amazing and every traffic light turns to green. We also have days when we wake up and we don't feel 100%, and we may not always know why. Sometimes it's really clear to us as to why something isn't happening, but sometimes it's not. And when we really learn to tune in with the lunar energy, and we develop a really personal relationship with the incoming lunar energy, it is extraordinary. I mean, for me, it's been such a game changer to really realize that actually my body, my emotions, and very often my thinking patterns too, are heavily influenced by the incoming lunar energy, which means when I'm aware of that and I understand how that's working, I can really stay on track. If I get knocked off balance, I can find myself realigning really quickly. But anyway, enough of this. First of all, let me just say welcome to everyone. Welcome to all of you who are joining us live. Thank you so much to Dermot in the chat, who is moderating for us today and has actually managed to successfully move a few of you over from one link to another. So Dermot, welcome, thank you. And if you are watching the recording of this webinar after the event, welcome too. It's really good to be here and really good to be connecting with you. So we have a really packed webinar. This is the first of two webinars about manifesting with the moon. And there is just, this is a subject that really speaks to my heart. It has been really revolutionary for me, a real game changer in terms of learning how to navigate my life and literally in terms of manifesting. So we're going to cover a certain amount of things today in this webinar, and then we have a second webinar lined up as well, which will follow on from this one. So let's move straight in to, I'm going to bring up a little slide here. So moon magic, manifest with the moon. We're going to cover three central themes today. Now there's a limit to, how much we can cover within the space of a webinar, but this is what we're going to be looking at for today. We're going to learn about the process and the principles of manifestation itself, because really if we understand these, we can really begin to attune our ability to manifest. And then we're going to understand how these steps of creating actually align naturally with the cycles and the phases of the moon. We're also then going to look at the different phases of the moon, what they actually mean and how they tend to influence us. And we're then going to look at the impact of the zodiac signs. The moon, as she moves through her natural 28-day cycle, she moves through all the different zodiac signs. We're also going to talk about the void of course moon. The void of course moon is actually like a little space in between when she moves from one sign to another, and I'll talk in depth about that in a moment. I'm also going to explain how personal this experience is and what you can actually do to really develop your own ability to enhance your manifestations using the cycles of the moon. I'm then, which I feel is really important, I'm going to touch on some of the biggest derailers, the blocks that get in the way of us being able to successfully manifest. And I'm going to talk about how the phases and the cycles of the moon can help us in moving through these. So we're kind of going to build a bit of a platform of understanding to start with. Then we're going to talk about how you can really use this information, this knowledge for yourselves. And then we're going to work out how this helps us to get through any blocks and difficulties that we have within our manifestations. And then hopefully we will also have time for some Q&As. So let's move on. What I should also just say is, in terms of Q&As, if you find that you have any questions as we're moving through the webinar, if you put them into the chat, wonderful Dermot, who is moderating for us, will copy and paste them, he'll check them out, and he will be able to forward them over to me. I can't really watch the chat and deliver the webinar at the same time because my attention is just not going to, I can't really give you that full attention otherwise in terms of delivery. So put anything in the chat as you think about it, and Dermot will make a note of it, and then we can look at those questions at the end of the webinar. So let's dive straight in. Let's look at the principles and the processes and the phases of manifestation itself. A very, very interesting process, because manifestation isn't just a question of sort of making a wish and then sitting back and waiting for the universe to deliver it to us. It's kind of not how it works. You know, we are souls on an evolutionary journey, and everything is about growth and evolution and often learning the lessons we need in order to actually be ready to really handle, having our deepest desires, being able to really walk that pathway of the spiritual warrior. So let us look at the principles. Let's break them down. You know, everything starts with a beginning. You know, we have a desire. It's a bit like the Wright brothers who dreamt that we could fly. You know, and a lot of people would have thought they were absolutely crazy, but actually they believed in their possibilities. They had that dream. So the starting point of any manifestation is ultimately that we imagine possibilities and we genuinely honour their potential. We evaluate then. We then have to think about what steps can we take to initiate these possibilities and bring them into form. Do we need to learn things? What do we need to do to be able to start to make this real? But we start with our desire and we sit in a space of possibility. It's like a new beginning, a space of sowing seeds. We then have to commit to a pathway. We need to be able to actually take the steps and the actions to kind of begin to get the ball rolling. Again, sometimes you might imagine something and it might just land in your lap the day after. But 99 times out of 100, we have to actually do something. We have to initiate something. We have to engage in a process. So really, step 2, we commit to this pathway forwards. We make a decision. We set an intention that we really want to make this happen. We want this desire. And we start to think about what we need to do and take steps to initiate and sow those seeds. Step 3, we open ourselves to ongoing reflection and evaluation. It's always important to consider how things move forwards. It's a bit like if I wanted to train in a new career or a new profession, and my first steps were to then go and research into some courses and training that I needed. I then need to evaluate. I need to step back and look at the information I've gathered. I need to look at the ingredients that I'm going to put together if I'm going to, write a book, for example, and I've done a bit of research, or I've brainstormed my ideas, I've taken the initial steps. I need to evaluate now to see how things are proceeding and look at the next steps. I'm then going to have to persevere. Okay, now there's perseverance is tremendously important in manifestation, and I'll talk about this when we get to the key derailers, because we also have to sometimes trust that if there is a diversion or an interruption, it may actually be happening. Really specifically to bring us greater clarity, to maybe take us on a little additional journey, to help us to know our direction, with greater clarity, maybe to give us some additional ingredients, to throw a few more things into the pot so that we really know how we're moving forwards. And then really, I think when needed, okay, whether in our external actions or within ourselves, we have to identify any ongoing work that we need to keep the energy flowing. So we validate, we celebrate all the things that are working. Let's say if I was writing a book, I validate and celebrate the ideas that are flowing into form, all the things that seem to be on track. But I also need to identify any areas where maybe things aren't moving forwards. Maybe I've had a mental block, or I've had a bit of procrastination going on. I need to look at those internal events or external events. Maybe external events are piling in and I'm not managing to write the sort of, 2 hours a day or whatever I committed to. So again, I need to then maybe think about boundaries, what's going on, evaluate, and I need to resolve. And sometimes also release. Sometimes if I'm procrastinating, maybe I've got a little bit of inner self-doubt or something going on. And I'm going to need to release that and work out how to sort of cleanse, clear, and move myself forwards. We then continue on this pathway of evolution. We're in this aspect, I think, at this point of co-creativity. We trust that we're going to be shown the next steps, and we start to pace ourselves. Steady and consistent action wins the race. We're starting to really know where we sit within this process of manifestation. We're knowing ourselves and we're knowing the project, the aspect of our worlds that we are manifesting. So we're beginning to find our place within it. We then evaluate again. Now, for me, evaluation is really, really key. We're always evaluating, we're always emerging, we're always looking and listening to the signs, the wisdom and the guidance of the universe. When needed, we sometimes have to course correct or tweak things a little bit. So again, we're moving into a phase of steady progress, keeping on track, and our pathway emerges. I think for me, this is a phase where we move into a space of what I would call practicing the art of allowing, being sort of holding our vision and yet being open to, if necessary, changing, adapting, just sort of going with the flow. I think practicing the art of allowing is really quite crucial in manifestation. We also, I think, need to, from a spiritual perspective, trust that the universe actually knows of our fullest potential and will hold a higher vision for us that is greater than anything we could possibly imagine. We understand that we'll be given what we need, not always what we want. This is a really crucial part, I think, of the process of manifestation, because if we think of manifesting as a sort of moving in cycles, which of course the lunar energy also does, manifesting tends to move in phases, and we often reach points, again, it connects to the derailers. We often reach points where we think it's not happening, it's not working. We need to kind of often within that space and time of our manifestations lean into a place of trust, where if something isn't quite running to plan, we often need to stop, pause, evaluate in order to sort of enter a new phase where we effectively sow seeds for the next chapter of manifestation. So we always need to sit in a space of trust, and the trust is very, very important, alongside our ability to listen to what's actually going on and to consider that actually the universe is holding our highest vision for us and is also trying to support us in navigating in the right direction. So let's now move on and look at the actual phases of the moon. Now, the key phases for me of the moon are the new moon, where we often sow seeds of potential. We then have the crescent moon, the waxing crescent. So after the new moon, where it's almost dark, we don't see, the new moon is a very, it's the darkest time of the moonlight in the month. Effectively, the light of the moon is blocked out by the sun and the moon sit together. We then move into the waxing period of the moon, where she begins to gradually get bigger and bigger. So we move through the crescent moon phase to the first quarter moon phase, to what we call the gibbous or the waxing gibbous phase, and then into the moon at her fullest. She then starts to diminish. So she then starts to get, from our perspective, looking up at the sky, she gets smaller and smaller and smaller until she eventually reaches the new moon again. We can see in this next image that there are peaks and troughs of energy here. Now, as you can see in this little picture here, bang in the middle where I've got the full moon, the moon at her fullest, this is a real spike of energy. It's like there's a real intensity around this. You can see at either end of the diagram where I've started with a new moon and sort of moved through the cycle to the new moon at the end. There are spikes of energy. The quarter moons are spikes. And then there's a kind of for me, like a pivotal turning point of the in-between energy as well. Now I'll talk a little bit more about this in a moment, but this just shows you a kind of a flow as we move through the 28-day cycle of each moon and each moon phase. So let's talk about the new moon. Now the new moon is always associated with a time of possibility. It's like a sacred marriage of the sun and the moon. They sit together. It's the spark of creative potential. In our next webinar, webinar 2, I'm actually going to be focusing on the new moons, the full moons, and how to really capture and enhance our ability to manifest with this really powerfully intense periods of energy. Now, the new moon is traditionally associated with the setting of wishes and intentions. And it's always associated with a sort of a space of possibility. Now, if you meditate daily, you may find that a couple of days before the new moon, you start to just have creative ideas. Stuff just filters through in your meditations. During the period of the new moon, personally, I always keep a notebook next to me because I want to keep a note of things. I keep a synchronicity notebook as well. And when I'm journaling, I really listen to the ideas that flood in around the time of the new moon. This is the time to begin to dream big, enter the dream time. The next phase is the crescent moon. Now this for me is a time of investment and nurture. It's where we're taking those first steps. We've perhaps sown the seeds, and really for me, it's like the ideas that came through in terms of the new moon period begin to sort of filter through, and I start to actually try and make something real. I also begin to identify any resistances. So if I'm procrastinating, for example, I begin to see and recognize that these things are there. So it's it's like we're building on the new moon energy, and indeed the energy of the lunar, the moon cycle. She's getting bigger. She's building in the sky for us. We then reach the first quarter. Now the first quarter is traditionally known as a time when sometimes hurdles and obstacles that need to be overcome push forwards. It's really interesting because for me, I find the energy of the first quarter really different. For me, it's a time of lots and lots of creative ideas. Very often, it's almost as though the solutions that I need come to me. So again, the phases of the moon will actually affect us each in slightly different ways. But for me, the first quarter moon, honest observation, identifying our current potential, looking at pathways forwards. This is the energy around the first quarter. It's a really important period of evaluation. We then move to the gibbous moon, so we're getting bigger and the energy is building. For me, I feel quite passionate around this time. Dreams are calling to be made real, ideas start to take shape. My pathway is gathering momentum. And I actually find I have to ground myself at this time, because if I don't ground myself, I sometimes find I can sort of run in too many directions or be so focused on where I want to go. I could literally walk past the doorway if somebody opened it for me because I'm so busy and involved. And if we think about the process of manifestation as being very co-creative, it's not just us manifesting, it's us in relationship with the universe. It's us in relationship with spirit, moving forwards. This is a time when everything starts to build. So very important to remain grounded at the same time. We then move to the moon at her fullest. Now this is a really interesting time because we know that the full moon is a time when emotions can run high. Now, I remember when I was, I was just a teenager, and somebody actually told me that there are more car accidents at the time of the full moon than at any other time in the month. You know, emotions run high. It's when the moon is she's at her most powerful and highly charged. We often experience quite intense emotions. it's a time when I think if we have swept anything under the carpet, we won't be able to keep the lid on it anymore. So stuff gets said, stuff gets revealed. It means it's an amazing time to to see what we need to see and to release and also repair, observe and heal. It's a real time of transformation, realignment. We can often literally feel the energy shift as we move from the full moon into the next phase. Very emotional time, the full moon. So we then move to the disseminating moon, the waning gibbous. So the moon is now starting, the energy of the moon is starting to reduce. Now this for me is a time of affirmation, validation. Hopefully I've released anything that needed to release at the full moon. Emotions have been released. I've seen things that are holding me back. I've perhaps worked in ceremony and release in order to heal those things. So I've kind of cleansed, and I'm ready now to move into a more steady process of manifestation, a steady phase. We then get to this re-evaluation point, the quarter moons, always re-evaluation. For me, the last quarter is different to the first quarter. The first quarter feels like a very personal evaluation point. I'm really thinking about the seeds I've sown, this phase of manifestation. The last quarter for me is not just about evaluation, it's evaluation and aligning with additional higher guidance. If I was going to, I don't know, book myself a tarot reading or something just for me, I would be doing this at this time of the month. Not just, I mean, there are different phases of the month when we might look for additional guidance specifically, but in terms of manifestation, I want to align with my higher guidance. I want to really evaluate in a way that allows me to make adjustments that mean that my manifestations are also beginning to align kind of almost beyond the personal and into the bigger picture. We then move to the balsamic moon. So our beautiful moon is moving back into a crescent position before we move into, again, that new moon space where we start again. We start to sow seeds again. This for me is quite a quiet time. It doesn't mean that I'm not continuing to do or to invest in my manifestations, but it's steady. I try to become ultra observant at this time, okay? I try to hold an objective viewpoint. The energy is diminishing, and for me it's about continuing on my pathway while being ultra observant. So I'm kind of moving into a space of preparation for the next new moon, where I'm going to set new moon wishes and new moon intentions, realign my energy with a new phase of manifestation. So it's a steady, it's a quiet, it becomes quite an inner kind of space. It's both observing the external whilst journeying within. That's certainly been my experience of this. So that's taking us through the processes, the steps of manifestation and the different phases of the moon. Now what I want us to do now is to just pull these together, because the phases of manifestation, the processes of manifestation, align beautifully with the natural energy of the natural incoming energy of the lunar influence. So let's just pull together the impact of the moon and the phases of manifestation. So if we think about it, we've got the first phase of manifestation. We listen to our desires, we allow ourselves to dream, we imagine possibilities, we honour their potential. The keywords for the new moon: dream time, possibilities, stillness, meditation, new beginnings, wishes and intentions, bypassing the ego mind and listening to our heart. So we evaluate, we decide what steps we want to initiate to bring something into form. The moon and the new moon energy, the influence of the new moon and the initial steps of manifestation align beautifully. When we move to the crescent moon, keywords: responsiveness, commitment to our intentions, taking actions, being bold, investment, nurture, testing the waters, observing any procrastination. Again, the second stage of manifestation, we commit to a pathway forwards and we start to take the necessary steps and actions to create a pathway of genuine and real possibility. We then open ourselves to ongoing reflection and evaluation. We consider, how is everything proceeding? This is the first quarter moon energy: evaluation, reflection, mindful and very honest considerations, identifying the next steps, clarity of direction, course correction if necessary. We then persevere. We need to move as the energy builds into a phase of doing. The gibbous moon, the waxing gibbous, perseverance, listening, observing and doing, and enjoying the journey. There's something really magnificent about this phase. We persevere in our doing, this phase of manifestation, trusting that any diversions and interruptions are sent to bring us greater meaning, clarity and direction. And then, of course, we get to the full moon: illumination, healing, release, transformation, realignment, rebirth. This stage of manifestation, when needed, whether in our external actions or deep within our own psyche, we need to identify any ongoing work to keep us on track and to keep the energy flowing. We celebrate and validate everything that's working. We identify any areas that aren't, and we seek to see them with clarity and to resolve and to release. So again, stage 5 in manifestation beautifully aligns with the full moon energy. We then continue, having hopefully released, renewed ourselves. We continue on our ongoing pathway of evolution and co-creativity, and we trust that we will always be shown the next steps. I mean, for me, this is a time to pace myself. Steady and consistent action wins the race. Again, the disseminating moon, the waning gibbous, renewal of our pathway and direction, personal validation, consistency, appreciation, gratitude, and humility. The moon cycles just beautifully align with the process of manifestation. We then pause and evaluate again, always listening to the wisdom and guidance of the universe. This is the last quarter moon phase. It aligns beautifully with the 7th step of manifestation. Our key words for the last quarter moon: congruence, authenticity, evaluation through higher guidance, aligning our progress with the energy and the laws of attraction. This is about being what we wish to see in the world, being what we wish to move forwards with, being what we wish to manifest. Now, this is an interesting stage because it's very, very relevant to some of the key derailers, which we'll get to towards the end of this webinar. Our final stage, trusting that the universe knows of our fullest potential and holds a higher vision for us that's greater than we ourselves could imagine. We understand we'll be given what we need, not always what we want. The balsamic moon, gentle, steady momentum. We become ultra observant, holding an objective viewpoint, really leaning into that space of trust, faith and belief, getting ready again to start a whole new phase of manifestation where we start to sow seeds again at the coming new moon. So this is how the cycles work. Now, peaks and troughs. Let's talk a little bit about the phases of this of the moon, because for me the periods when we get to the new moon, the new moon is like a really condensed spike of energy. And the full moon is a condensed spike of energy. We then actually have these sort of phases in between. I think the quarter moons also, there's a spike of energy. When we are in the crescent or the gibbous phases, for me there's a pivotal moment in the middle of that where the energy peaks, but it's kind of like an interconnecting phase which we can really utilize in terms of thinking and doing and putting stuff into action. So let's have a little look at the flow and intensity of these phases, the peaks and troughs. And I also want to talk about the way that manifestation is an ongoing process. It's like it's not a straight line. I think that's sometimes where we in our Western sort of perspectives, we often think about time as a direct line. We start from A and we want to go to Z, and these are the steps we're going to take. And we tend to work in quite a linear fashion. Nature doesn't really work in a linear fashion. The moon doesn't work in a linear fashion. The cycles are not just circular, but they're spiraling. Everything is always moving forwards in a circular motion. So let's first of all, here we have the circular motion. We can see these are the phases of the moon. This is a constant stream of energy that operates in a particular way. This is the way the moon works. She navigates the earth. She's our satellite, and as she journeys around the earth, this is the way this is consistent, is what I want to say. And consistency, again, I'll talk about that when we get to the big derailers. It's very helpful to understand that there is a natural consistency in the flow of energy. When we learn to align with that, we can really we can navigate from a position of much greater awareness and self-empowerment. This is really just an image that I created to show the spiraling nature. The moon cycles, it's not just a circle. We are always spiraling. We're always in an evolutionary space of momentum. Things don't go back. We're always going forwards. It means that if something we're manifesting doesn't emerge immediately, it doesn't mean we should stop or give up. It means that we need to renew and engage in another cycle and another process. When we're able to do that, again, we stay on track. We understand that there are peaks and flows, ebbs and flows within the energy. And when we can sort of lean into those, again, it really helps to keep us on track. Here we see these peaks and troughs again. Now, as you can see, there are spikes of energy where the energy is particularly intense. Now, I think this is probably a time when it might be quite useful for me to bring up a page from the diary, The Art of Manifestation, Astro Moon Journal and Diary. Now, you don't have to use the diary in order to manifest with the moon. There's plenty of information you can access on the internet to tell you where the moon is, what phase she's in, what cycle she's in, what sign she's in. Personally, I post every day on Facebook, so if you don't have the diary or the journal, or you have a different diary that you work with or a different journal, you can use that. But I'm going to bring up an image, just bring that onto our screen for a moment, because I think it's useful just to show this. So this is at the beginning of the chapter in the diary for January of 2022 for the Art of Manifestation Astro Moon diary. What I've actually done in next year's diary, I mean, every year we hopefully improve it a little, but this year what we've actually done is I've listed each of the peak phases and a little bit of astrological information. So at the beginning of January, we can check in and see where the peak energy is. We can have a little read of how that energy is likely to be, and we can sort of in preparation begin to navigate the coming month from a position of greater awareness. Move that away. Okay. I'd like us to think about these peaks and troughs as a spiral. Remember, when we're manifesting, if something at any time feels like it just isn't working, it's not happening, there's always opportunity to re-engage with a new cycle of energy, a new phase of manifestation. I mean, this is ongoing. Manifestation is not an end goal. We're manifesting all of the time. Literally, thoughts create things, emotions also create things. We are always in a process of co-creativity. Working with the lunar energy means that we start to manifest from a much more conscious position. Okay, so let me talk a little bit, before we dive into the influence of the zodiac signs, I'd like to talk about the personal nature of working with the moon. The amazing thing about working with the moon is you don't even need to know the details of your astrological chart. If you start to check in on a daily basis where the moon is, what phase she's in, what sign is she in, Is she in a void of course position? I'll talk about that in a moment. When you start to check in on that information and you listen to your own personal real experience, you will start to literally know how the lunar energy affects you in a very, very personal way. So if I use me as an example, for example, whenever the moon moves into out of Pisces and into Aries, now I know that for me that is a time when I will inevitably feel I feel high. I've got a lot of energy. I feel passionate. I'm very motivated. And now I happen to know my own personal astrological chart. I grew up with an astrologer in my family. My younger sister is an amazing astrologer. So astrology is like a second language to me. I've been very, very blessed. But now I happen to know exactly why, because of my astrological chart, when the moon moves from Pisces and into the first part of Aries, I know why I feel fired up and passionate. The moon is actually passing my moon, and my moon happens to be conjunct a planet called Eris, who is the female warrior planet. The moon and my the female warrior planet Eris mean that it really sparks my sense of justice. It gives me that passion, that desire to make a difference. Now, I actually know about this because my younger sister has spoken to me about it. I didn't even a little while ago even know that Eris existed. I did, however, know that when the moon passes from Pisces into Aries, I feel very fired up. What I've learned is, in the context of my own world, I need to use that energy and I need to use it well. So I know that if I've got to engage in quite a challenging conversation, I'm far more mindful of managing to navigate my emotions in quite a sensible way. I'm probably going to prep for that meeting. I know that if I have a lot to do, this is a great time for me to jump in and do a lot of physical activity because I'm going to have a ton of energy available to me. So even though through my experiences of having great conversations with my younger sister, I actually know why I feel fired up and passionate, I don't actually need to know why. What matters is that I need to know that I am. Whenever the moon is in that position, that's how I'm going to feel. And I can utilize that energy. So when we listen to the phases of the moon and the zodiac signs as she moves through, you will find that personally you are affected in very specific ways. Now, I'm just going to pull up a page from the diary again, pop that up onto the screen. Now, this is literally the first page of the diary, 2022. Now you can see the key phases, the pivotal peaks in energy are listed. There's little symbols there. You can also see, you can actually see daily exactly where the moon is and whether there will be a void of course period as well. And there's, real details. That's the first page of the diary. Here we have the second. Again, you can see we've got new moon is showing the timings of the new moon. You can see the phases of the new moon, of the moon as she moves. Now, what this means is that you can actually, as long as you have a reference point, you can gauge what phase the moon is in, what sign she is in, whether there is a void of course phase, and you can listen to your own personal experience. I can't stress this enough because it is such a personal journey. Because when the moon passes from Pisces into Aries, now for me that's a time of great passion, but it may not be a time of great passion for you. For you, it may actually be a time of replenishment. It may be a time of relaxation, depending on your own chart. But you simply don't need to know all of that detail. You don't have to become an astrologer. As long as you listen to your own real experience and you make a note of it. I'm just going to bring up another page of the diary, the next page as we move through January. That is why there's a section in the journal, and in the diary, for journaling and note-taking. I actually made the diary in this way. Now, as I said, you don't have to use the diary to do this. You can find the information you need on so many different sites, and I myself post daily on Facebook the timings and the location of the moon. So, but make a note somewhere. You know, if you don't use this diary, or you use a different one, or you journal, even just keeping a notebook for yourself so that you check in daily as to where the moon is, you check in on the phase, and you check in on the sign and whether she's in a void of course space. Make notes as to how that leaves you feeling. Are you fired up? Are you tired? Are you more sensitive? Are you a bit crotchety? You know, really, really listen to your own real experiences, because in building that awareness, you will start to be able to navigate with real conscious awareness as to how the incoming lunar energy affects you and influences you. And you can then apply this to your own process, those phases of manifestation. Now, I'm aware that we've got a lot to get through. This is, honestly, I could talk all day about this subject. So let's move into the influence of the zodiac signs and the void of course moon. So first of all, the void of course. I'm just going to see if I can bring up a bigger image for you actually here. Will that work? Yes, there we go, a bigger image for you. So the void of course moon is basically, it's like the space in between. So the moon moves, as from our perspective on the earth, we look up to the skies and we see the moon moving through the different zodiac constellations, and she consistently moves through them, you know, in a particular order. That's how the skies are, that's how the universe is. When she moves from one sign to another, sometimes she literally goes from one sign into another, but sometimes there is a space in between, okay? And when there is a space in between, she's no longer affected by the kind of personality of that sign. So if we think about the moon as she moves through the different personalities, that's the way I like to think of it. Each sign has a distinct sort of energy, a flavour. When the moon is in the void of course phase, it's really interesting because she doesn't have any kind of direction or flavour about her. Now, some people find this quite challenging actually, because they can feel a bit unanchored and out at sea. And yet other people, for me for example, I find it really liberating. So really interesting. I've got a really good friend. She and I sort of compare notes on our moon manifestations. For her, the void of course, if there's a long void of course period, she feels utterly unanchored. It's really, really hard for her. So she's very conscious of that, and she works with that energy. For me, it's liberating. I mean, I think that's all. I'm a Sagittarian. I've got a lot of fire in my chart. And so I tend to, for me, it's liberating. I'm not restricted by the personality of any sign. It's like there's no direction, I've got freedom. So for me it really works with that I think my Sagittarian nature, but for other people it doesn't. Now I think it really pays us to be aware of the void of course moon. It's why in this year's diary we have actually included it. You'll notice on the pages, I'll just bring one up here, you'll notice for example on Monday the 3rd of January, not only is the moon, we begin the day with the moon in Capricorn, she moves into a void of course position before she then moves into Aquarius. If you tune into or follow me on Facebook at all, I literally do post daily, letting you know the time of the moon and the void of course periods. So it really can be very, very helpful to work out how these affect you. Again, this is such a personal journey, and the more you recognize the empowerment of that, the more you can really lean into this for your manifestations. So let's look at the zodiac signs very briefly. We'll run through them. I mean, this is a webinar in itself, I think. So if we think about the aspects of the moon in Aries, Aries is a cardinal fire sign ruled by Mars. Lots of first house qualities, the key words self, beginnings, courage, confidence. We can initiate things. There's enthusiasm, inspiration, vitality. Sometimes with Aries we feel like we're on a mission. It's quite an emotionally powerful time. Use the energy to be assertive and to initiate your ideas, say how it is, to take action. I should say all of this information is actually in the diary and the journal. You can find information at the beginning of both of those. But if you tune in with this, again, listen to the way that the moon affects you when it's in Aries. Because you might, if you think about it, the moon is all about emotion, water. When she's in a cardinal fire sign, you know, sometimes water and fire make steam. So again, listen to how that influences you. As I said, for me, when the moon's in Aries, I'm fired up, I'm passionate, I'm good to go, and it's helpful for me to channel my energy. It might affect you differently. The moon in Taurus. Taurus is a fixed earth sign ruled by Venus. Key words: solid, stable, steady progress, possessions, money, very practical energy. So grounded, sensual, earthy. You can use the energy when the moon is in Taurus to attune yourself with the natural rhythms of nature. Again, listen to how this affects you. What I would also say, because I'm mindful of our time, if I speed through these a little bit, if you bookmark this page, this video will be up for quite some time, so if you bookmark it, it does mean you can come back to this information, you can go over these things again. As I said, the information is in the diary and the journal. Gemini, it's a time of communication, reaching out, connecting with others. Gemini is a mutable air sign ruled by Mercury, the great communicator. We can often see things from both sides. We're often, for me actually, I find I'm really perceptive. It's like my perception is increased, and I'm I'm a bit more sharp-minded when the moon is in Gemini. The moon in Cancer, cardinal, water, ruled by the moon. I mean, this is a wonderful time for me to just, I get into family, nurture, sensitivity, intuition, very responsive sort of time actually. So again, use the energy of the moon in Cancer to nourish your soul, spend time with the people you love. Again, life isn't always about moving forwards. It's not always about being, goal orientated, as our Western culture teaches us. We need to take time out sometimes. Again, when we start to learn how the moon is influencing us in a personal way, we can really make sure that we schedule things accordingly, or that we pace ourselves in a way that's appropriate and aligns us with a much more natural rhythm and cycle. Moon in Leo. Wonderful. Sing, laugh, express yourself, find your voice. Again, romance, creativity, playfulness, celebration, pride, leadership, very big personality. When the moon's in Leo, we can often get a real burst of enthusiasm. So again, if you are struggling in any way with manifestation, if you're struggling with perhaps procrastination, when the moon's in Leo, this can be a really good time to sort of get yourself back on track, feel fired up again. Virgo, wonderful time to be really organised, process-based. Don't be overcritical. I would say when the moon's in Virgo, people often engage with quite a lot of inner criticism. I'll talk about that in the derailers. But really dedication, attention to detail. Moon in Libra. Libra is a cardinal sign, air sign, 7th house qualities, relationships, marriage, partnerships. Again, when the moon's in Libra, it's again, if you're off balance in any way, it's often exactly the right time to begin to rebalance. It's also a really important time to reach out within relationship and partnership. Moon in Scorpio. Oh, we can do a deep dive at this time. With Scorpio, we often find that we journey inwards, especially if you connect it to something like the full moon in Scorpio, for example. My goodness me, talk about peeling back the layers. All is revealed, but at such depth. Again, be sure to listen to yourself. Take your yearnings seriously. Sometimes, a Scorpio moon will really reveal to us the things that possibly we're not allowing ourselves to really see. Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter, questing, freedom, vision in an optimistic future, connect with hope, possibility, a very good time when the moon is in Sagittarius, often to expand horizons and dream big. But again, listen to your own personal experience. I'm going to stress this constantly. Capricorn, cardinal earth, ruled by Saturn. When the moon is in Capricorn, for me, I find I can just have such a pragmatic day. Really taking practical actions. If I'm in any way stuck, I can really seem to just steadily move forwards through things. I can build, I can really embrace the joy of doing. Moon in Aquarius. Aquarius, fixed air, ruled by Uranus. Now this is a very interesting time because when the moon is in Aquarius, we can often share our ideas, we can collaborate, we can have that higher vision. So again, checking in with the phases of the moon, which we've already touched base on earlier in the webinar, this is where we can really begin to align with a higher purpose. And lastly, the moon in Pisces, 12th house qualities, the subconscious, psychic abilities, spirituality. Again, really interesting that there's always a duality with every energy. You know, there's a sort of, depending on what's going on in the realness of our own unique individual worlds. There's always a sort of a double-sided coin. If there's a ton of stuff going on in your world, you could receive profound illuminations, but if there's a ton of stuff going on in your world, you might actually feel deeply emotional and a little bit unanchored when the moon is in Pisces. But again, if you understand this, you can work with that energy. You can know when to relax and spend a day meditating if you're able to, or making sure that you realign your energy at the end of every day. Always, awareness is the key to self-empowerment. So, wonderful friends, I am going to touch base. I'm very mindful of the time and I want to have time for some Q&A as well. So let's move straight into the big derailers. Okay. The three C's: consistency, contradictions, and congruence. Okay, consistency is very big. The ebb and flow of our own personal energy, our enthusiasm, our ability to stay on track. Contradictions, we say it but we don't believe it. Congruence, we say it but we're not being it. The influence of our emotions, the ups and downs in life. Also intentions, moving beyond the mind. Sometimes we can also try too hard, miss the signs, taking actions and not taking actions. Setting intentions on a foundation of negativity. I'm going to whiz through these. Okay, or I'm just going to, we're probably going to go slightly over time, and Dermot, I'm aware that you've allocated a bit of extra time for us, so thank you so much. There's just so much to share with you guys, truly in this subject. So first of all, let's look at the three C's. Consistency. Okay, the ebb and flow of our personal energy. For me, this is like, you know, when we set a New Year resolution. Okay, you know, we start with so much passion and enthusiasm, and we're really feeling dynamic, and we're going to do it, and we're really going to commit to the thing that we really want to manifest. Okay, and then we kind of fall flat on our face. It's kind of like setting yourself a diet on January the 1st, New Year resolution. I'm going to lose weight. I've eaten and had far too much to drink over Christmas and the New Year. And then, you know, for the next 4 days you eat 1 carrot a day, at which point your energy is at an all-time low. You crash and burn, and you go out and you know, and you stuff yourself with chocolates and pizza. You know, it's that kind of, it's really helpful to understand the way that the lunar energy affects your personal ebb and flow of energy. Because when you tune in with that, you'll know when to really hold firm and, you know, eat your 6 carrots, or whether to actually pace yourself and have a day when you don't worry too much about it and you're kind to yourself, because it stops us from getting into that downward spiral of despondency. You know, our awareness of the lunar energy and how it affects us personally, including when she moves through the signs and the void of course positions as well, that can really help keep us on track, and it helps to manage and navigate our personal ebb and flow of energy. It's really important, because this is a really big derailer. You know, the moment we start enthusiastically and then we fall off, we fall off the wagon, so to speak, it's devastating, and it has a big emotional impact. Contradictions, when we say it but we don't believe it, this is a big derailer. In fact, you know, I feel like I ought to do a webinar just on the derailers. But we will touch base with these a bit more in our second webinar anyway, that's coming up, where we're working with the new and full moons, because these spikes of energy are really powerful in processing and shifting through and working through and coming through and out the other side of these derailers. So contradictions, you know, it's like we put the wish into the universe, but deep down we don't really believe it'll ever happen. You know, saying it but not believing it. This is a real biggie. It really, really is. We can use the energy of the moon, particularly the full moon, to identify what's really going on underneath. And we can actually use ritual, ceremony to process these experiences and move beyond them. And we can use the cycles of the moon and the phases of the moon to work with these in a really big way. Congruence, saying it and not being it. You know, it's kind of like saying, I don't know, it's like saying I'm going to stick to this, and then we don't stick to it. Again, it debilitates our own personal self-esteem. We can use the energy of the moon to work with these processes. We really, really can. I have to say as well, and I hope I'll have time in our second webinar when we look at the new and full moons to touch base on the tribal moon cycles. I have to say these have been a deal breaker for me. I cannot tell you how different my world is in terms of manifestation when I started to work not just with the cycles and the phases of the moon in a daily way, which is what the diary does, but when I started to work with the 13 tribal moon cycles. It has just revolutionized my ability to work through the inner blocks that were there, and I wasn't always even present or to them. I wasn't aware enough of them. So very, very powerful things to do. The influence of our emotions. Now, the above things that we've just talked about, the 3 C's, they affect us. You know, and life happens, you know, stuff happens. You know, life doesn't run smoothly sometimes. We can so get knocked off balance. But again, if you know how the phases of the moon affect you, you can use that energy to realign yourself and get you back on track. Okay, it really, really helps. We all have days when we feel more sensitive. We all have days when we're more fired up. Now, if something happens in your world on a day when you're more sensitive, if you're already aware of that, it's so much easier to step away and become an observer of yourself and keep yourself back on track, to be kind to yourself, rather than delving into that space of self-criticism. I mean, again, for example, if the moon is in Virgo and that throws you into a space of, I don't know, self-perfectionism, where you're a bit overly critical of yourself and something happens in your world, if you know that, you can step back rather than just being in it and drowning in the emotionality of it. You can really use your awareness as a source of empowerment. Intentions. I need to say as well, when we set intentions and wishes, an intention must be more than just a thought. You know, the lunar energy aligns with emotions. Our desires must literally be heartfelt, okay? And so if we set an intention and it's just in our head, it's like a logical process. It's like writing a shopping list. We need to feel it. You know, the law of attraction is all about feeling it, and the moon is all about feeling. She's all about emotion. She's all about the stuff of the heart. You know, when we really combine the heart and the mind, then we get into a space of really dynamic capacity to manifest. So preparation is kind of everything when we are setting intentions. We need to get into the right zone. We need to be able to feel our way into something, not just think it, okay? The phases of the moon help us to do that. Our awareness of the phases of the moon, and also our awareness of, again, as the moon moves through the zodiac signs and in the void of course position, that's when we can really, really connect in and know how we're feeling. Oops, I apologise if there was a noise that shot up there. Oh, good grief, I have something coming up on my screen. My apologies. Okay, I seem to have managed to remove it. That's marvellous. This is exactly what I mean. Life happens. And the one thing I can honestly tell you, that learning to work with the lunar energy, I am, as a personal, just in my personal everyday living, I don't get knocked off balance in the same way that I used to. And if I do, and because of course sometimes it happens to us all, God, I write myself so quickly. It's extraordinary. I mean, I just cannot tell you enough how empowering this has been. It's why I really have wanted to write about this stuff, create stuff to help others work with this energy, and to share it in these webinars. So, last few derailers. Okay, trying too hard and missing the signs. Again, if we are living in alignment with the natural rhythms and cycles of the moon, we know when to push forwards and we know when to ease back. Do you know, we're taught so often in our Western culture that we should go from A to B and never ever stop. And do you know what? We can be so goal orientated that we just, you know, the universe could open 25 doors for us. And do you know what? We might miss them all because we're so orientated on having to move forwards. And so really, sometimes this is another big derailer. The lunar cycles really help us with this. And again, the signs, if you know how the zodiac, the influence of the zodiac signs affects you personally. Also, not taking action when needed, procrastination, fear of the unknown, the I can't be botheredness stuff. We have days like that. It's highly likely that the moon in a particular sign affects us. It affects you in that way. It certainly does me. Actually, so rather than entering into a space of I can't be botheredness, I will try and program days where I'm a lot more gentle, a lot kinder with myself, if I know that that's likely to be, if the lunar energy is likely to affect me in that way. Again, it is such a personal journey. Lastly, one of the biggest derailers ever. I want to say something about this because it's so important, but I'm really going to focus on this in the next webinar. Setting intentions on a foundation of negativity. Okay, keeping your energy clean and your vibration high. How many of us, and this definitely applies to me, how many of us have literally, it's like the world is rubbish, you know, everything seems to be going wrong, and that's the day when you sit down and you say, right, I'm going to set some intentions because I need to change it. In a way, it's really interesting because it's a good contrasting experience, but you're actually setting your goals on a foundation of quite a lot of negative energy. If we prepare and realign our energy first before we set our intentions, we are far more likely to be successful. So we can listen to our contrasting experiences. We can listen to the negativity in order to identify a clearer pathway. But we then need to align and almost like rebalance our vibration before we then set our wishes and intentions. And this is particularly relevant to using the new and full moon energy. So, wonderful friends. I think I'm going to move to the Q&A bit. We've gone over time already. Dermot, thank you so much for sort of hanging on and bearing with me. It is so difficult to squeeze so much information into this webinar. I mean, honestly, every bit we've spoken about is truly a webinar in itself, really. Let me check my phone because Dermot will have been texting me through, WhatsApping me through with some questions and things. So, right, okay. So we have a question from Sorel. So Sorel, welcome and thank you for joining us. It's really lovely that you're here. She says, I've been trying to manifest a goal for a couple of years now, and no matter how hard I try, it's not happening. Do I need to accept this, even though I want this, it's not my destiny? Right, that's a fabulous question. Thank you, Sorel. Now, I would suggest, before you accept that it's not your destiny, I would suggest focusing on that particular manifestation, that particular desire, and working with it for a set period of time, using the moon phases, the moon and the moon cycles very, very specifically. Now, depending on what your ultimate goal and desire is, what it is you're wanting to manifest, you might also find that the tribal moon cycles will give you the insight and awareness to peel back some layers, to highlight if there are any blocks that you're currently unaware of, if there's something deep in your unconscious. And I worked as a therapist for 28 years. I mean, everything as a therapist is all about self-awareness. We can never work with anybody beyond the degree that we've worked with ourselves. And I can honestly tell you, I have been utterly stunned. I mean, it has been such a game changer to look at the tribal moon cycles and work with them, and literally peeling back those layers, learning more and more and more about myself, and realizing that there were aspects of me that I just hadn't ever fully understood. So the tribal moon cycles and the knowledge base that came with them has really opened up my awareness, as well as using those, it's like using a whole lunar cycle to navigate a particular aspect of my process, as it were, in order to move my ability to manifest forwards. So I would suggest, Sorel, before you give up on that, give up on something, try using the tribal moon cycles. I've written about those in the journal. I will focus on them in the next webinar, which I will now have to reschedule because, as you will know, the link to this first webinar didn't work, so I've used the link to the second in order to go live today. And thank you so much to all of you, and my apologies to anyone that was unable to connect in because of that. We'll shift a few things around, and I'll email everybody out again that's on any of my email lists. Let me now check. Melissa, if trying to manifest for so long now, my family to receive blessings and good health, am I doing something wrong? Ah, bless you, Melissa. I'm not convinced that you'll be doing something wrong. It may be that you've said for your family, when we're manifesting, it's very, very difficult to manifest for others. Ultimately, we can set wishes and desires for others, but ultimately they're on their own pathway. We can't always manifest for others. We can only ultimately, I think, manifest for ourselves. What we can do, though, is reach out, particularly in our new moon wishes and intentions. We can reach out for resolutions and certain things for others in that way. I'm going to touch base more on this in the next webinar. I do need to say to you, I don't think that you'll be doing anything particularly wrong, but more that maybe we need to it may be more fine-tuning your manifestations in a way that allows you to recognize what you personally can and can't do in relation to the pathways of others. Now I have EOC, I don't know your actual name. Hi Jenny, I've been trying to manifest my freedom, though my ex keeps pushing out our divorce. What can we do when another person is involved? This is really interesting because it follows through from what Melissa was saying. I think what we have to do if we're manifesting and someone else is involved, we have to focus our attention on what we can do and on the outcome that we ourselves want, with as good a result as possible for all parties. But we have to be able to almost detach from the pathway of other people. This is really, really interesting, guys, because I think what I will do is bring this into the next webinar. Really what happens when we are manifesting on our pathway, but we are being affected by the influences of others. Sorel is asking, what are the best crystals, incense oils for manifesting? Do you find making a moon altar? I think, Sorel, there are many, many different crystals that we can use for manifesting. I think it depends what we're actually wanting to manifest. And again, I will try and touch base on this. It's going to be so much to cover in the next webinar when we are looking at the new moons specifically and the full moons and how we use the energy and additional aspects of things that we can bring in terms of ritual and ceremony. Yes, definitely keeping an altar is a good thing to do. Where are we now? Let me see. Chris, what is the best time to have a life regression to heal the past? Do you know, Chris, I would say any time. Absolutely any time. And I think depending on what you are trying to manifest, again, I would be tuning in with the tribal moon cycles and looking at their relationship to specific aspects of manifestation. And again, look at the specific nature of the full moons, particularly the full moons, in terms of healing and release. So again, depending on what we're needing to heal and release. Also eclipse season, I'm going to dive into that briefly. Eclipse season, when we are in eclipse season, it's an incredible time to access the past and also orientate into the future that we wish to create. Eclipse seasons, the full moons in eclipse seasons are, for me, the most powerful time of opportunity in terms of healing and release. Rena, does the different zodiac sign relate differently to the full moon? Rena, most definitely. Every single full moon through the 13 moon cycles she'll as she journeys in that spiraling process, each full moon she will enter through a different sign, and so the full moon will be very influenced, the energy will be influenced by the nature of that sign. And so again, in terms of manifestation, we can really if we understand again how the moon affects us personally when she passes through a particular sign, we can use that full moon energy to enhance our ability to see a pathway forwards, particularly with the full moon, to release and let go of anything that holds us back in a particular area of life or of manifestation. I am checking in again. Sorrel, does your sun and moon sign affect how successful you will be? Very good question, Sorrel. And my apologies, actually, I've missed I'm trying to go in order of these and answer as many as we can. Aparna, I'm new to both manifesting and learning. Sorrel, I will come to you in a moment about the moon. I wanted to know if this journaling should always be done at night. I actually think, Aparna, you can do it at any time of the day or night. To be honest, find the time that is right for you. Personally, for me, my best journaling time, interestingly enough, is first thing in the morning. That's when it works best for me. It's like I haven't yet, my energy is so clean first thing in the morning. I haven't yet started to engage with the stuff of life, but it may be different for you. You might also find that when the moon is in a different zodiac sign, so again, listen to how that affects you personally, you might find that your journaling works better when she's in a particular sign. Work out what works for you, listen and trust your own experience. Sorrel, does your sun and moon sign? No, definitely. I would say it doesn't affect how successful you'll be. It may influence the areas that you'll be most successful in manifesting. Again, for me, if you're manifesting with the moon, it's really, it's so personal that it's about learning to listen to the impact of that. So for example, when the moon passes your sun, you might find that that is a really, really good time for you to be more active in either journaling or even setting wishes and intentions or preparing your wishes and intentions for the coming new moon. Because when the moon passes your sun, that's a real essence of creativity. When the moon passes your moon, you might find that that's the time to journey inwards and to listen to your deep, deep, deep desires. So I would, again, if you know where your sun and your moon are in your chart, listen to how that actually feels for you. Make a note of how that influences you, and then utilize that through your knowledge and awareness, through listening to your own experience. Let me reopen my phone again. Jade. Oh, thank you. Most illuminating presentation. Thank you. In the next 6 weeks, what are the moon phases and best time to manifest heartfelt, life-changing career moves? Right, Jade, in the next 6 weeks, so we're going to be, every 28 days, we are in a new moon cycle. So we're going to go through a whole cycle and into a half a one. Now, we've just come through a new moon, so we've just entered a new moon phase. The tribal moon phase is actually she who walks tall woman, so really, really interesting. I'll talk about this in some of the Sunday readings, but what I would actually say to you, Jade, if you're wanting to tune in, and maybe this is a really, really good a good opportunity to tune in with this and just let you know about, I post daily on Facebook. So in fact, what I'll do is I'll bring up some slides in a minute before we sort of wrap up for the day. I bring up slides, I post something on Facebook every day, which lets you know what phase the moon is in, what sign the moon is in, and also if there's anything astrologically going on. I don't give you a big astrological detailed thing, but what I do is I look at the chart every single day. I look at where the lunar energy is, and whatever leaps out at me, I will just write about that energy and post it. In a moment, I'll post some examples. I'll literally show you what the incoming energy is over the next week. But before I do that, there's one last question here to answer. Caroline, she's saying, is it possible to get a transcription of the screen slides explaining moon phases, etc.? Caroline, in the diary and the journal, all of the information is in there. There's also, we've actually now got a Kindle version, because not everybody uses a hard copy diary. So we made a Kindle version of all of the information that is in both the journal and the diary, as well as actually I've given a really interesting account of an overview for the sort of overall flow of energy for the astrology of 2022. Now currently that's available on Kindle, and it's in the Kindle Lending Library as well. That's got a ton of information in it. I will also see whether I'm looking at whether I can actually get that up onto my own website as well, and make that available. At the moment I don't have the slides, but I will look at and see what I can do about that. But thank you for that. And now let me tune in for anyone, because you don't actually have to buy our journal or diary at all. You can buy any journal or diary, and you can actually check in every day somewhere on the internet. You can find out the details, but you can, if you wish to, tune into the stuff that we post every day. So let me show you. So this is a slide from Facebook. This is going to come up actually. This was actually today's. So today the lunar energy was quite gentle, fairly steady and consistent, and it's just whatever you're manifesting, let it unfold. It's like going with the flow was an energy for me of today. Tomorrow, the 7th. Tomorrow, it's quite an interesting, the waxing crescent moon, as you can see, is in Sagittarius tomorrow, and the lunar energy, as I've looked at it, it's actually really rather lovely. It's full of expansion, optimism, balance, harmony, great conversations, flowing connections, really lovely. There's a second slide that I'll be posting again on Facebook and also Instagram, if you do Instagram, again the same day, because there's a void of course period tomorrow as well, so I've posted that too. On Monday, next side, it's Monday again, I've said something about the energy, along with again it's the waxing crescent moon, and she enters Capricorn. Tuesday, very, very interesting, very dynamic energy. So you can sort of see the kind of stuff that I post. I'm simply putting this up here at the moment to show you, because if you want somewhere to just find out what's actually happening, what's happening with the lunar energy, what sign the moon is in, if there's a void of course period, what are the times, I do post daily. And yeah, Facebook and Instagram, you can follow me there. So do check that out. Now, I think we've gone way over time. Dermot, thank you so much for being present for this extra time. Thank you everyone for sticking with us, especially through the couple of hiccups that we had. Such is life, we have to go with these things. So wonderful friends, thank you so much for joining me. I was going to say bookmark the pages, but if you bookmark the page of this particular webinar, you can return to it, because it'll be live until probably the end of the year, so you can revisit it if you need to. Likewise, we will now be rescheduling the next webinar, because we've had to change the links today. If you are watching this webinar and you want an email notification of the next one, do just join my email list. It's in the information box below. I will put it into the comments as well for phone users. If you join any of my email lists, I will always email out about a week beforehand, and then the day beforehand, just to give you a reminder. Wonderful, wonderful friends. I feel like I've crammed tons and tons of stuff in. I hope this has been helpful, informative, and will help you to really yeah, really connect with the lunar energy, and to embrace manifestation in a way that you basically don't get knocked off track. And yeah, it keeps you on track. And if you do get knocked off track, it's minor, it's temporary, it's a tiny, tiny blip, and you realign and get back on track really, really quickly. For me, understanding the lunar influences has been an utterly life-changing, yeah, game-changing addition to my world. And so it's been an absolute joy to share with you. Tons and tons of love to you all, and I look forward to seeing you in the second webinar.